So 2016 started out looking like it was going to be a really good reading year. I started off reading a lot of books, and slowly, as the months went on, I started reading less and less until when I got to June, I just didn't have time to read a single book. Not having read a single book in June, I am still at the 47 books read this year. And I feel like those books that I didn't read in June, those 47 of them, shouldn't go to waste. So I'm doing, instead of a June wrap-up, a cumulative 2016 wrap-up for the first 6 months of the year. Yay! But we're not gonna do all the books, just the good, the bad, and the I can't even. So 2016 started out really good with the very first book that I read being a 5-star book, and that was Winter by Marissa Meyer, narrated by Rebecca Soler. It was an audiobook, and I did 5 stars because, oh my god, it was so good. But then I immediately DNF'd the very next book that I tried to read, and that was Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes. I was going to read this book in high school. I was supposed to in my senior year when I was supposed to take Spanish literature, but instead I took Japanese 1 because I just didn't want to take any more Spanish. And I was like, you know what, I will still read Don Quixote, and then I just didn't like it, and I tried reading it earlier, got 100 pages into it, and it became the first book in a long time that I actually DNF'd. And DNFing books became a pretty big thing in January. I DNF'd 6 books that month, and on my Goodreads shelf prior to the month of January, there were only 4 DNF books. So I actually more than doubled my books that I didn't finish, or I just didn't want to finish. And those are the books that I can't even finish. And those books were Dark Lightning by Mary Farmer. This book had potential. I really liked the plot. It was just the way it was written was so chaotic that I found myself getting frustrated with it and ultimately just putting it down. Then the next book I DNF'd was Evershade by Alexia Purdy. Cat. If you read the Iron Face series, felt very similar to that, and I didn't actually want to read that one. Then I also DNF'd Water by Tara Harmony. This book I found to be a very frustratingly written book. Every time I was like, oh, it's reading time, and I was like, oh, the book I have to read today is this one. Oh, I don't want to read today. I had that feeling towards it, and I just couldn't bring myself to justify reading the thing. So I ended up DNFing that one. Then I DNF'd Forbidden by Amy Miles. This is like a vampire romance thing. It was just so much romance. So much. And then the last book I DNF'd was I Bring the Fire by C. Gockel. And this is a story involving Loki coming to Earth. This one just felt very dry when I was reading it. I wasn't quite sure how the plots interconnected because there's 2 separate storylines. They had just started to interconnect around the time I DNF'd it because, like I said, I felt very dry reading it. This was another one that when the time came to read and it was like, oh, what am I reading? I'm like, that. And that's not a feeling I wanted to have in 2016 reading. I wanted to enjoy all the stuff I was reading. Then there were 2 books that I read. I don't normally give out ones because ones are like, you have made my reading experience so miserable that usually those would be the books I DNF, except I couldn't DNF them usually because they were school books or something like that. So 2 stars is usually the lowest I go. And I actually gave out 2 of those this year already, and the first one was What the Dickens, The Story of the Rogue Tooth Fairy by Gregory Maguire. This story, I probably was just too old for it. And the other book that I gave 2 stars was Darkness Falls by Jessica Sorensen. The fact I didn't really enjoy the reading experience. And now the books that I gave 5 stars this year, because I did give some of those up. Obviously Winter was the first one. And then my go-to manga this year has been Fairy Tail, and I actually rate each volume of the manga individually, and some arcs are better than other arcs and more enjoyable. so I tend to rate those more favorably. I gave Library of Souls by Ransom Riggs a 5-star. This was the final book in the Mr. Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children series. I gave the first book like a 4-star, and then the second book like a 3.5-star. It might have been a 4-star on Goodreads, but it was actually like a 3.5-star. I found Hollow City to be very, what I call suffering from the journey complex. The characters go on a journey, their goal is to get to a certain spot, but an entire book is them trying to get there, and as a result, on those books, I always feel like I'm waiting for something to happen, but it's never going to happen in that book. On the other hand, the Library of Souls, and everything I was waiting for to happen, happened, and it was amazing, and it was good, and I enjoyed it. The next book I gave 5 stars was Unwind by Neil Shusterman. This was a really good book. I wasn't expecting it to be that good. In fact, like the first 5 chapters, I was reading it in the car, and my brother was leaning over my shoulder, being like, "Don't turn the page yet," or "Why haven't you turned the page yet?" or "Read faster, Megan." So I really enjoyed reading that. My brother enjoyed like the first 5 chapters of it, and then he said he was going to pick it up, but hasn't actually yet. And I gave Ghost in the Flames by Jonathan Muller a 5 out of 5 star. This is the second book in the Ghost series. Enjoyed the experience of reading it, like I said, and that seems to be more mostly how I grade my stars now, is how much did I enjoy reading this book. And the last book that actually got a 5 out of 5 is Legend by Marie Lu. I haven't read Prodigy or Champion yet, so we'll see how that goes. But I found this to be a very, I want to call it a light dystopian. I enjoyed reading this book a lot, and I'm really glad that I did. I don't want to leave out any 3 or 4 stars, but you know, I did read a lot of books and I don't want to talk about them all. So what I'm going to do is pick books that I gave a 4-star to, and then give a review for each one. So it's like a book a month for review, even though we're going to get them all in July.